Hey everyone, happy new moon. I almost said happy new year. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm excited to be here with you guys today to do this reading for the new moon. We're going to do a collective reading today and go through the astrology for everyone. This is a very special new moon, and it's a very decisive break from the overall energy that is around us or has been around us. So if I'm visualizing this energy or representing it as something, I would call it like a break in the clouds. So imagine a cloudy day, maybe it's raining and it's dark outside. Suddenly the sun breaks through and gives us some light. So it's a very beautiful energy, and it's connected to some other new moons and an eclipse, which I'll tell you about. I'm also going to share with you guys some dates that may have happened in your life in the past that are connected to this. We'll do that at the end. It's the activated chart positions. I'm sort of modifying it and bringing it back. And we're going to do a full tarot reading for everyone. And then members, you guys get your extended because we have been waiting on that for a while. Members also, we're going to do your individual sign readings next. It's just a matter of fitting it in between the new moons. But before we start, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this deck, but this is a deck I gifted myself, I think a year ago, fairly recently. And it's a really nice deck that I like, and I just wanted to pull some cards to begin. My nails are very bad right now. I couldn't get them clean. I wanted to come out and do this. I've been in the garden transferring seedlings into it and all that stuff, so they've taken a beating. Okay, so we have abundance first as the first energy. Why don't we pick 4 cards for discussion purposes? Then we have the card of direction. This is just for everybody who's watching, everybody who is interested. And then we have the contrast energy, the energy of contrast. That's very similar with the Gemini frequencies right now. And then we have success. Okay, very good. Okay, abundance, direction, contrast. Well, you guys don't know this yet, but what I intended to talk about with you guys today is deeply connected with direction. So why don't we start there? So let me show you guys the astrology chart. Is this the oh good, I have the right chart. I'm just scared that something's going to go wrong because I'm switching between a couple different windows. Okay, so the new moon is happening here at 9 degrees of Gemini. And this is a very special degree between 9 and 10 degrees of Gemini. And I'll explain that in just a minute. This is the first decan of Gemini. And it's quite a rare new moon that's happening here. These types of events, astrological events, they become a little rare. And especially when there's something else going on, i.e. other transits that it's connected with, or if it forms a bigger picture. So the reason this new moon is a big deal, and it's bringing all this positivity in, is that it is infusing the energy with a new frequency. So this is the type of new beginning. Now there's different types of new beginnings, and I always try to bring your attention to them so that you can bring your focus to it and apply it in your life in some way. I think tomorrow we'll do an all sign on this, or maybe it'll be just a general all sign to look at everything. I just decided to focus on astrology instead today, because if I stretch myself too thin, then by the end of the all sign, the energy will just be, kind of not as intense or not as coherent. So this is a nice way to do it when I'm fresh, right? Okay, so this new moon has happened this morning. It happened at 8:30, 7:30 a.m. this morning Pacific time at 9 degrees of Gemini. And if you've been watching me for a while, this is with a fixed star called Aldebaran that I focused a lot of videos on, about 4 or 5 videos on last year. The reason for this is last year when the North Node was at 10 degrees, 9 degrees of Gemini, there was a very rare conjunction between the Sun and the North Node in this position. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But this star called Aldebaran is considered one of these big stars in the sky. The big stars in the sky, the ones that everyone talks about in terms of ancient astrology or history, and usually often referenced by many cultures. For example, Aldebaran's very bright, so many cultures had reference points to it. But yeah, so this star, Aldebaran, is one of these famous stars. And they have different categorical systems. But you'll often hear about Sirius. You guys probably know Sirius. You probably hear about Regulus. And you probably hear about, what else? Oh, of course, Medusa. We've been talking about that a lot. It's actually here with Mercury. That's kind of the shadier side of the energy right now, but we're getting through it. So there's definitely a lot of different frequencies that these big stars carry, and a lot of history and meaning behind them. So Aldebaran is the eye of the bull, and it is located in the Taurus constellation. So just to make it clear so people who are new don't get confused, there are two major different systems of astrological configuration. There's the tropical system that Western astrologers use, which is based on the seasons, so it's not actually based on the stars. And then there's a second system called the sidereal system, which Vedic astrologers use, and it correlates with the actual star positions. And there's something called the precession of the equinox, which means that slightly because of the Earth's tilt, there's a little bit of a delay in terms of where the spring equinox begins, the first day of spring. And so over thousands of years, there's a precession, and so the equinox actually moves. And so these two different systems of astrology start to drift away from each other. For example, right now we're 24 degrees separated from the sidereal constellational zodiac. So that means that where Western astrologers like me measure the stars and planets is 24 degrees away from where they actually are, the constellations. So when you hear me say, oh, it's in the constellation of Taurus, that means that in sidereal, it's in the constellation of Taurus, but for the purposes of our zodiac, we measure it in Gemini at 9 degrees. So that's the discrepancy. And it's not a bad one. I think people put too much, hairy, scary energy into it than it needs to be. But just so you're clear, for the first 24 degrees of any sign, we're actually referring to the constellation of stars behind it. And it's okay with planets, but when we get into the stars, that's when it starts to blow your mind a bit. So that's what's going on with that. And when I say it's in Taurus, it literally is in the constellation of Taurus. However, due to the precession of the equinoxes, that constellation is now for Western astrologers in the sign of Gemini. So technically the sun is still in Taurus constellation alongside the Taurus constellation. And this division isn't perfect even in sidereal, but let's not get into that. I just wanted to explain because today's conversation is deeply about Taurus. And you might be asking yourself, like, Veroosh, why are we talking about Taurus? It's Gemini season. So, and it's not that one is wrong and one is right. In fact, both are technically incorrect. So, anybody arguing about one way or the other is just being a little, I don't know, facetious, or like it's not very coherent arguments. So anyway, so there's this beautiful star called Aldebaran. This star was revered by ancient cultures, and 5,000 years ago, this is where spring began. So where we count spring, Western astrologers count spring at the vernal equinox of 0 degrees Aries, or 0.1 degrees Aries. But 5,000 years ago, 3000 BCE, the original astrologers were counting the vernal equinox spring beginning at this position here, 9 degrees of Gemini, which is now 9 degrees of Gemini. And so it's connected with this star, and this star has something called a heliacal rising. This means that it is the first time that it emerges over the horizon in the morning at dawn. And so this heliacal rising was connected to the first beginning of spring about 5,000 years ago. And so this star Aldebaran was connected with that passage. And this was when Aldebaran started to emerge from behind the rays of the sun in the morning. So you could start to see the star rise up over the horizon. And so this was a very important moment for ancient cultures, and it was, a signal of a new beginning. So 5,000 years ago, people were so dependent on nature. And so this was, life again after winter. We can survive. That was the mentality. So this star has huge, huge energy associated with it. And that's why this new moon is very important. When you look at the new moon itself, astrologically, there's not that many aspects on it. There's a very loose sextile from the recent conjunction between Mars and Jupiter. That's actually very favorable and nice. It's giving us all extra energy, extra oomph, extra abundance, success. But then also we have this contrast energy, right? Compare and contrast. So make sure that you're not comparing yourself with other people. But on its own, this new moon is a standalone moon. And in some ways, that's a good thing. There's no energy interfering with it. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is retrograde in Taurus at the Medusa star, one of these other famous stars called Algol. Medusa has two names, Algol and Medusa. We've been talking a lot about it because it's deeply correlated with what's happening in Ukraine. And Mercury retrograde has just reached this position, and it's not just this star alone that's the problem. It's creating a trine to Pluto in Capricorn. And I don't want to reiterate the same thing, only to acknowledge that the ruler of the sign of Gemini is in this complicated position. Now there's rumors that have emerged that President Putin, who I believe has his moon in this position, I've told you guys about that, may be very ill with cancer. Interesting, because the reason I think that his moon is here is a lot of the offensive into Ukraine started alongside the stellium in Capricorn and lunar transits over Taurus in this position while the North Node was here, so where his moon was. So suddenly there was this big show of power and force in a very evil way. And it's interesting that Mercury retrograde is going back into something, and it emerges that it's possible. Now, Lavrov has said that this is fiction, but who knows what the truth may be. Anyway, so I think that's interesting. I do think that Mercury retrograde, whether it's world politics or your personal life, in some way may be renegotiating stuff, So in this retrograde energy, I feel like it's a fixing of things, fixing of energies. So that's exciting and that's nice. However, for the new moon, how that affects you is that there's some kinds of complications that have to be resolved in your personal life. And it's probably things to do with a physical nature because it's in Taurus. And it's probably something that's carried over from the past, whereas before you were not able to address something, now you have the means to do it. And when Mercury turns direct on June 2nd in a couple days, it'll move forward again from this position. So it's really been hovering right at the Medusa star for a while. So something is being renovated. Something's being really fixed on a deep level, and that's a good thing. Even though for some of you this may feel uncomfortable and uncomfortable conversations with people and figuring things out. coinciding with this new moon, it's a very good energy in my opinion, because it's looking at something a second time to get it right. So a revisionist energy. And so Mercury happens to be the modern ruler of the first decan, where this new moon is. So each sign is divided by decans. So we have 1, 2, 3. So 10 degrees, 20 degrees, and 30 degrees, right? Each sign is 30 degrees long. And so Mercury is the traditional ruler of this decan. So again, same energy applies. The tradition, I said the modern rule is Mercury, sorry. The traditional ruler is Jupiter. And so this is, like I said, also coinciding with this new moon. And so this is a sextile, and this is a very nice sextile, but a loose one. It's about 6 degrees off of a sextile, so that's pretty generous. It's sextiling by sign, so it's still positive. But Mars and Jupiter joining together is also pretty rare, especially in these degrees. The last time Mars and Jupiter were together was 1940. And on another social media app, and for the members, I posted something about that. I posted, and if you guys want to look it up by my media, by all means, or if you want to look it up yourselves, in 1940, FDR, Roosevelt, gave his State of the Union. And I was looking for, what were the similarities and contrasts. And when I read that State of the Union, it was very powerful speech. It was all about human inequality and how democracy erodes into authoritarianism when everybody's not taken care of. And you guys know that that's where my heart is in terms of equality for everyone. So I thought that speech was very poignant for this time now. And because there's not been another conjunction of Jupiter and Mars in these degrees, about these degrees for so many years, 80 years, it's interesting that that's the message from the past. That's the echo of history, as I call it. So the echo of history is like, watch yourselves. If there's inequality around you, then, or if in your family somebody's suffering disproportionately to everybody else, it pulls down the entire family, right? So I think when I was looking through the different years and the different conjunctions of Mars and Jupiter in Aries, I really saw a pattern of, rising up of, definitely there was an energy of, the opposition rising up. So people who we feel threatened by rising up and causing a disturbance. There was a lot of stuff that happened during those times. But then there was also a lot of spiritual transcendent moment of people realizing of what's important. So in 1940, what happened was America wasn't in World War II yet. And America didn't want to be in World War II. That was the point. And they didn't actually enter World War II until December 1941. So they held back on those commitments. It wasn't a commitment that they weren't forced into, but at some point they had to decide to enter the war. Anyway, but it was this kind of awareness, like the responsibility towards other people on the other end of the world, and this kind of thinking of the world as a one big community. So Mars and Jupiter to me in Aries just feels very spiritual. It feels very connected with higher principles and values and morals. And so I think it brings that energy to this. And that really coincides well with our Aldebaran motif, or our theme of Aldebaran with this new moon, because it really lifts us out of the other things that have been going on this year, namely economic instability, very troubling times in terms of, world peace and balance of power, very dark energies. It's almost like right now it's very similar to those times when it's almost like when I said rise of the opposition, it was like people who are morally bankrupt, or people who are doing things that we deem really uncivil and unkind and just irrationally evil, and them having enough power to do it regardless of what we say and do. So that's a scary situation where someone else has power and they're very bad people, because then how do you negotiate that with a person who doesn't care, right? So the answer to that was that spiritual enlightenment and that heightening of energy and looking at things from a heightened perspective and getting connected with your higher principles, your higher values. And it works out in the end, I promise you. So that's what happened before, and that's what's going to happen now. And abundance and transcendence and all of that. So that was the energy that brings to this new moon here. So this new moon is very much, lots of dark things in the world happening at this time, but this new moon is like a fresh breeze of fresh air. And it's supported by, its rulers in that position. So like I said, unaspected from other things. Now, I want to take you guys back, before we do the tarot, I want to take you guys back to a couple dates. So this is why I was being a little fidgety at the beginning, because I want to get it right. So I want to show you guys a couple charts, and especially those of you who have been watching me for a while, you may be familiar with these charts because we spent a lot of time with them. Also, I have a playlist in the description that features all the videos in which we discuss these charts. So I encourage you to watch them if you're interested in a deeper understanding. So this is a chart for May 30th, 2021, last year to the day. And this is when the conjunction of the Sun and the North Node happened. And it was a very special conjunction that also is very rare because it happened with Aldebaran. And so this point of transition, this point of ancient spring and the emergence of this star over the horizon, the heliacal rising, is just very spiritual. The North Node represents our spiritual path and enlightenment, and the Sun with the North Node would have in some way illuminated a way forward. Now, my assumption a year later is that whatever started last year at this time during this conjunction in some way has reverberated in your life for the last year, which means that look at your last year and see what the new tone of your life has been. It doesn't necessarily mean a huge outward change, but something has fundamentally changed in your trajectory. People have already been telling me, they became separated from their partner, or they started thinking differently about domestic violence. Somebody told me about that. They had an event with an ex and it changed things for them. So it's that mental shift that this conjunction brought on. And it can be very positive things. For me, it's been very positive. I've kind of philosophically changed in terms of the way I think of things, and it's been a very interesting journey in the way that my mind's been directed and the things I've been reading and learning from and all these things. So it can be a whole bunch of different inspirational ways that you look at the world that may have changed with this conjunction. What's more is this happened on May 30th, which is rare. And the heliacal rising of Aldebaran is actually determined by your latitude. So it's only for the northern hemisphere, by the way, so I'm sorry if you're in the south. It still applies to you in terms of like global consciousness, but stars are dependent on the hemispheres. So in the south, you have a different set of stars than we do in the north. So just go along with it. But if you're interested, heliacal rising is dependent on basically how far north a person is. So the heliacal rising of Aldebaran right now, if you're 5 degrees north, which is very close to the equator, is June 2nd. Whereas where I live, 50 degrees north, I live in Canada, it may be as late as June 7th or even 8th. So over the next week, the star is going to emerge from over the horizon. It's pretty exciting. And so last year, in 2021, we had this conjunction, the emergence of the star, and which marks this ancient spring when astrology was created. Astrology was created alongside this star. That's why there's so many motifs of cows and bulls and mythology. That's when all these traditions sprung up, these ancient traditions of the cow and the bull, right? And so Aldebaran is the eye of the bull. And so that's all connected with that. So the beginning of spring, very, very symbolic. And also on June 10th, this is my next chart for you guys, we had the eclipse. So we had an eclipse, and this was at 20 degrees of Gemini, but it was still a partial eclipse here. So last year, the week, from the 30th through the 10th was a very special change in trajectory that you may have experienced, and see how that has manifested in your life now. So don't think about things like one event that changed your life forever. That may happen for people, but it's much better to appreciate your life in the way and the patterns that have changed. Very, very special. This conjunction between the Sun and the North Node is not going to happen again until 2077. So this is literally it for our lives. These conjunctions happen in other places, but specifically with this star, it's pretty poetic and pretty beautiful. There's going to be another conjunction in 2040, but it's not going to be close to the star. It's going to be 7 degrees away, so it's not going to be the same frequency. This is the big one, and you can still participate in it under this new moon, and that's what I'm here for, to tell you, don't miss this opportunity, because the next one's not coming for 56 years, so it's going to be a while. So I also wanted to show you a couple charts of, actually 3 charts of previous new moons that I thought were pretty similar, and this will help you get familiar of this energy. So rather than talking about astrological ideas, let's talk about things you can relate to in your life. So this is a chart for May 28th, 2014. And this is a time in which the conjunction happened at 7 degrees of Gemini. So this was only 8 years ago, May 28th. Maybe you can go back to that time and see what your life was like, what was going on, write the time back. We can see a lot of things going on in Aries. Do you guys remember Uranus in Aries? That was a trip. The South Node was in Aries, pretty crazy times. I was doing the channel back then, so I can remember. I don't think I was talking so much about astrology. I think back then I was still doing a lot of tarot. But I've been into astrology since I was a young teenager, so, it was my mind was definitely there already, looking at the charts and stuff. I just didn't know how to express it yet. I've really learned how to talk about it in the last few years. Anyway, so this conjunction, this new moon, which is a conjunction, happened then. So you might want to go back to 2014 and see what kind of energies are similar. Pluto was already in Capricorn. It's been there since 2008, 2009, so it's been a while. But yeah, these energies were pretty intense. The other time that I saw that was pretty similar in terms of a new moon close to these degrees was in 2009. So that's when Pluto had just entered Capricorn, before I had the channel and all that. And the reason that I brought up this chart for you to focus on, maybe look back to May 24th, 2009, is because Mercury was retrograde. So it was actually retrograde very close to Medusa, and the North Node was about to enter into Capricorn. So that was a while ago. And maybe there's an event in your life that came up at that time. And that event, both of these events, 2014, 2009, may be really connecting to this energy. But the main new moon that I found that I thought was very similar, you guys can see how similar it is if you guys know a little astrology. Very similar. You can see this was a while back, was in 2003. Maybe some of you guys were born then, because I think you're 19 if you were born in 2003, 19 years ago. And so if you were born there, this is a huge new moon for you. By the way, any of these dates, if someone was born then, I think this is the only one that's far away enough for people to be actually born and be watching this. So if you were born at any of the dates I mentioned, they're very significant. If you're born alongside those times, very significant dates. Anyway, so what I wanted to show you is this new moon happened at 8 degrees, almost 9 degrees of Gemini, so conjunct Aldebaran, excuse me, and the North Node was already in Taurus at 29 degrees. This was an eclipse. And so this was a partial eclipse in 2003. And so this was an event in which a lot of things happened in the world. This was the year Tesla Motors was founded, so it's deeply connected to now because Tesla is really on the front page of the news these days, right? So this eclipse, a starting energy that started in 2003, has carried over, reverberated into now. When people ask us in astrology about how long a transit will last, that's a pretty funny question. You really want to think about it as throwing a rock, a pebble into a lake, and when it kind of reverberates out, the implications of transits can last 20 years. So I think that this event on May 30th, 2003 is deeply connected to the energy now. And so this was a time also when there was a lot of upsurge in defiant energy. And I don't mean defiant in a good way. That was a time in which Boko Haram kidnapped 250 girls in Nigeria. That was a time in which ISIS was bombing Iraq and destroying, by the way, really ancient religious symbols from Mesopotamia and Babylon. So really ancient symbols that humanity as a whole depends on. So these everything that we talk about astrology comes from that, right? So those were being destroyed. And of course, America had entered into Iraq as well as a part of their, situation that they were a part of. So there was a lot of very difficult energies at that time, and I would say they were kind of oppositional, contrast energies. And they weren't necessarily the best ones, right? They were sort of things that were those people that think differently than us, in such a way, like they're willing to do bad things and we don't have the power to stop them, that kind of frequency. It's just a reminder that these energies will work out. And I think that every evil has to have its day to say what it needs to say. And it's much better for it to say what it needs to say than to hide and not say what it intends behind the scenes, because that's how evil grows. So I don't wish anybody to get hurt, of course, but it's better that people show their cards if they're evil cards so that we can address it. So that was an energy in which that happened. Also, the Human Genome Project was finally completed at that time. So they mapped out the entire genetic code of the human being. And that's deeply connected to what's happening now. We talk about this a little bit less, but essentially there's a commodification of every aspect of our being, our public spaces, our physical bodies, what we eat. It's all patented and owned by corporations. And in 2003, that was a huge connection with that. So it's not to say that something bad began. It's more that these big patterns, and let's leave it on a positive note, there was massive protests against the war in Iraq. And there was tons of people saying what America was doing was wrong. And there was like a big pushback. And that's reverberated as a voice of the people. In the 90s, people protested, Lilith Fair and like women's rights movements. But it turned out to be, I remember, because in the 90s, they ended up saying, well, if we don't say it in the wrong way, then it's okay. That was really the takeaway from the 90s. PC language. So if you don't say it in a bad way, then your biases and prejudices are okay. That was the end of the 90s. That was the conclusion of all that work that people did. But in the 2000s and 2003, people were pissed. I mean, they were angry that, there was so much military force being directed in an unfair manner. And so people started stepping up and saying no. And that's deeply connected to things right now. All the human rights movements around the world that are trying to stop big business and big government from, doing whatever it wants to innocent and vulnerable people. So that's the nice side of it. It's not just evil, but that's the energy of 2003. So this eclipse, in my opinion, was huge. Look, Chiron was in Capricorn back then. Wow, that's where everything sort of happened. The imposition of the state apparatus onto us, right? And the caging of citizens. So 2003 till now, it's a big cycle. And so therefore, these cycles with May 30th, and what we're seeing now, so last year's North Node Sun conjunction and this year's new moon are really a precedent setting for a new direction. So you want to do two things. You want to first assess and take a look at everything that's happening, and take in all the new things that are happening. What are the new patterns? What are the things emerging? The new types of social organization or events in your own life. And secondarily, it's kind of a personal new beginning for you, and this big chapter that sort of has continued. So remember, we were looking at the different times. We had 1940 and then 2003. These are huge moments in time that had reverberated. So whatever's beginning here now isn't an overnight answer, but it is something big, and it's worth taking a look at. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little presentation. It's a little bit wordy, but I hope you don't mind. Now let's take a look at the energies of the cards, and we'll do that. And then at the end, stick around, because I will tell you guys by year which years are going to be significant with regard to this new moon. Okay, so let's take a look at the tarot. I've put the astrology away. A card kind of stuck around. Oh, okay, we'll take this. So we have the 9 of Cups, which is Jupiter in Pisces. Okay, so let's see what kind of energies we have with this new moon in Gemini. We have the 4 of Pentacles. Okay. And then we have the Tower. There's going to be a reveal of a shocking piece of information. This could be on a personal level, or it could be on the collective. I'm trying to fix my nails, whatever. So there's a piece of information. There's definitely some kind of holding pattern. Holding pattern means don't act yet, or you naturally feel like you don't want to act on something yet. And I think your instincts are right, because there's something that's coming out that's going to change things. I think that many of you may be feeling unsettled in your relationships at this time, not in your close relationships, but your general relationships with society and with your casual friends and acquaintances around you. You may be feeling a little bit like distancing yourself from them. Maybe some of the things people are doing are not necessarily to your liking, and you feel uncomfortable simply by their behavior. So if you're married to a man or a masculine energy, they have a very strong draw towards you at this time. There's a very nurturing energy there. There's a very loving energy. This is with Gemini season. There's a really strong frequency here of reconciliation and working things out. Not from the point of love, although it applies to love as well. It also applies to camaraderie and closeness, the closeness of the brothers of Gemini, the two twins. And so in this kind of sympathy and compassion, there's energy there. Then we have the Knight of Swords, Page of Swords, Gemini, Aquarius, or Libra. Some of you might be really on a new direction. The desire to pull away from some of your groups and circles and friends and find something new. Things are just not sitting well with you at this time. Some of you might be running away from someone in your family who's hypercritical from you, who's hurtful at this time. It's the time to go now. With Mercury retrograde, especially in Taurus, ruling this new moon, there could be this energy of you stuck around in a situation for too long. Now's the time to go. So especially with a controlling person. They don't have to be a man, and they don't have to be an air sign. But what I do see is someone really trying to clamp down, and you trying to get away in your own direction. I don't think that this is an energy in which I'd say don't look back, go forward. It doesn't have to be the end of the relationship. It's the end of their influence over you in such a way. So maybe, and this only applies to people who have been sitting there and feeling very suffocated by this person's energy. So someone might be, imposing on you, and you want freedom in a new direction. And it's going to feel more and more uncomfortable or unwilling to stay there or stay with that energy and accept how they're behaving. Then we have Six of Swords, big energy of moving on. This energy of moving on is from the mind, which means that you cutting ties and not emotionally looking at it, but just through the facts. Air sign, Gemini, very rational in its thinking. This is a way for me in a new direction. It doesn't have to be away from people. It can be a situation or something else, changing of direction. Something feels dirty. Something feels like it's imposing on you. Something feels like it's trying to get the better of you or control you to its liking, to its convenience. And you really can't stand it at this time. You have to get away. There's a King of Cups. There's also very supportive and loving energy. And especially those of you who are partnered up with a man, I feel as though there is someone who you're close with who's giving you a lot of love, and there's a lot of compassion and care and nurture. Somebody who is supporting you and understands your needs. Then we have the King of Swords, Gemini, Aquarius, or Libra. I think that this person is triggered. It almost feels as though someone has attachment issues, anything from BPD, attachment disorder, all sorts of different things like that, fear of rejection, that someone is being triggered. And, you know, it's like it takes two to tango, and I'm not victim blaming here, but some people react the worst when they're put on the spot in a situation because of their fear of abandonment, because of this stuff. Because here, to me, it signifies that the person, and this feels like a family member, someone close to you, if you step away, then they won't be triggered. And I don't think that they're doing it out of bad intentions. I think what I'm seeing is that they're doing it out of being triggered and drawn into, you know, kind of like a lost mentality, or, you know, they're feeling that rejection. And so by distancing yourself, they get to go back to an untriggered state and be more like you like them to be. So it's not the end of the friendship. I just feel as though somebody is conflicted, someone's grappling at something because they're afraid or because they have personal issues. And so this King of Swords is very helpful in suggesting that when left alone, they'll do much better. They'll be great. The Five of Cups. So I think that regret and disappointment forces you back into situations that you are not helpful to you. So out of guilt or shame or feeling responsible, you go back and you perpetuate a cycle of something not good. This is saying that you need to address that, and this is a time in which you can identify that so you can get away from it and go in a good direction. So it's very hopeful, actually. Then we have the Ace of Cups. Something new is coming into your life, or possibly into the other person's life. Maybe this person is alone and maybe they're getting a new friend, so the pressure on you will be diminished. This almost feels like leaving your dog at home. I'm sorry if I'm talking about your husband or whatever, but it feels like you're leaving your dog at home and you're feeling guilty and it's stopping you from doing whatever. Can you see I don't have a dog, but that's kind of what it feels like. And so it's almost like a dog having another dog to play with and then feeling better. So humans are like animals, so I'm not calling anyone a pet, but I'm saying that this Ace of Cups is actually a very nice feeling for me, because I feel like somebody's going to have something else, so you will not feel as guilty and you'll have more freedom to branch out and go in new directions. Then we have the Page of Wands, a Sag, a Leo, or an Aries, secondary transits in Earth. This person, I can see there's definitely someone that's going on here that's weighed down. This person had tried to do something that was beyond their means. They stepped out too far. They tried too hard, all of these different things. And I feel like they got burned doing it. So they overstepped their ability or resources or whatever. And so they got anxious because they got burned, and then now they have I sense a very, very strong anxious energy. Don't leave me, don't, those kinds of feelings. Then we have the Queen of Pentacles, Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn. I think that there's I think that there's definitely being set free from different people and different situations. And I feel as though there's definitely kind of like not everybody will accept it. Actually, this feels as though there's pressure from a female, possibly a female, that is enacting pressure on you in terms of getting away. So like your mom saying, give it another chance, or why are you doing this? Why are you distancing yourself from your husband? You know, so someone, a female, could be putting pressure on you to kind of go against what you feel you must, and so you should still go with what your heart intends. We have the Queen of Cups here. I think that things will resolve, and I think that there's going to be very important conversations about things and people, which will allow you to go in a new direction. Now, this does not have to be a family situation. It can be work. It feels as though there have been pressures on you to get to go where you want to go, and maybe it's lasted even a year since last eclipse, June 10th, 2021, or the North Node conjunction, May 30th, 2021. So this is a situation in which maybe you have been wanting to go somewhere, but because of people and situations, it's been stuck. And it looks as though it's like a group think situation where everyone's talking to each other. And from that conversation emerges new ways for you to get by. So you have either advocates, people who speak on your behalf, or people who support other people in, you know, understanding what's going on or how to handle things better. So there's definitely a supportive energy trying to help people, you know, help you be more free. So the peer pressure is changing and the blocks are being removed. There is the Four of Wands. This is actually interesting in this position. You may feel that you want to go to a person's place for dinner or something like that. And again, it's because of your friendship and camaraderie. Just like any other addiction, relationships and emotional addictions can suck you in. So a dinner in certain instances for now, you can go later, but while you're trying to branch out, going for dinner and these socializing things may actually be sucking you back into a social environment that's overall what you're trying to get away from. Okay, here is the next message. Again, kind words. There could be kind words and kind of love bombing is a very intense word for, you know, narcissistic abuse or something dark. There could be people that are cooing to you, you know, like pigeons to try to, or like purring to get your attention like a cat. And they could be kind of trying to solicit you, but you have to think to yourself, is this for my best interest? So I think that so this is interesting. It comes up with the cards we had before. I should have probably kept them out. The contrast card. I think that's very, it feels as though you have been around people and situations that are unlike you. And because of responsibility or because of sentiment, you've stuck around with them. You know, you've kept up with the masculine energy is very dependent. And then we have a Capricorn energy here in the Devil. This is an interesting position for you. This is actually saying it because of the position, not the card itself. This is again saying that do not oversaturate the situation with your nostalgic feelings, because they're actually working to your disadvantage. You can still have a relationship with whoever this is about and still separate yourself from this for your own betterment. And this is guaranteeing you that you're not losing family, you're not losing things, you're just finding yourself. We have the Six of Cups on the bottom. So it's like, be strong in your direction. That's what it's saying. One thing in the astrology that I didn't mention, maybe I did, I don't remember, but I should mention it now, is that the first eclipse that happened in June last year, and this conjunction between the Sun and the North Node, that was the mental beginning, because the North Node is a very ambiguous place. It's not literal, it's figurative. And so the physical manifestation of what happened then is coming into fruition now. So whatever you've been sitting on, think about it and apply it now. So that's the energy. So I hope you guys like this. Members, we're going to go into this deeper in the back end. But before I go, I want to show you guys some dates that might help you put things in perspective now. So if you were born, this is my activated chart positions. So this is just one of the charts to show you the example. But if you were born in May 77, so that's these dates, they don't have to be specifically May, but May is the exact point at which this energy is the strongest. So if you were born in March, April, June, July, it still applies to you in that year, but less of an intensity, okay? So this is very, very good energy. If you were born in May 77, May 89, or September or August 2000, April 2001, this is a very lucky time in your life. And also, if you had events at that time that were happening, they may be somehow connected to this new moon. Okay, so that's exciting. The other dates for this, and this is less about being born and more about experiences in the past, but July 2012. So this new moon may actually connect very deeply to July 2012 or a situation. Again, it can be, May, June, August, September 2012, any time at that time, but especially July 2012, a situation can really go the next step. So look back to 2012 and see, or if you're born at one of those times, it's very important. The other date that's very important, if you were born or you have an event from December to March 2001 to 2002, this is huge. So this is the chart for them. So if you were born, I guess if you're young, hi, welcome. But if you were having a life event 2001 to 2002, December through March or so, this is going to be a time in which some karma is going to be lifted off your shoulders, especially like persistent stuff, like stuff you're stuck with, stuff that's been with you for a long time. This is going away. So this is really good. And you might finally catch a break. So this is exciting. Or let's say that an event happened for you in December 2001 and you've been living with the consequences of it ever since, this new moon can be breaking that and actually giving you an ability to move forward. So that's exciting. And then 1984, if you were born in 84, if you had an event then, or if you were born in 1965, this is a chart for 1984. Again, this will be a time in which there will be a big push forward in your life. There could be a lot of getting over things. We see Chiron here in Gemini. So there could be a big push forward, especially things that have been stopping you from moving forward and progressing in your life. This transit can help to get you going or get you moving. Likewise, 1965, if you were born then. The last date that I have for you guys today is 1985, and that's when actually Chiron was with Aldebaran. So that if you have Chiron with Aldebaran, that is a whole conversation in and of itself. So if you're born in 1985, July or June to July, any time in 1985, really, plus or minus a few months. But this is an intense transit to have alongside Aldebaran. You carry a lot of the world's weight on your shoulders, and you carry a lot of consequences from your family and your immediate environment in your life. So you are the keeper of other people's problems. And this new moon is very healing for you, especially on that level. Or if you had an event in 1985 that just really brought you down or really had you in some complicated stuff for many years, this is a time in which you get to live it down a bit and move past it. So yeah. So I hope you guys like this reading. Members, I'm going to go and film your extended, but I hope you guys liked watching this. Maybe I will just not do the all sign tomorrow because I feel like we've covered everything. So for brevity's sake, we'll do that. But we'll do other things because I'm back. I've been back. I just hurt myself and it's just one thing after another. So everything's good with me and I hope everything's good with you guys. Members, I'm going to post the link to the extended here in the comments right after I do it. I'm going to go do it now. So it should be up in a few days. And yeah, just use the dates that I gave you guys today to reflect on your life and see how it's connected. It's much better to look at it that way than any sort of prophecy or prediction by an astrologer. So those are the dates in which the current events could be really connected to now. This is a beautiful new moon. Spend your day wisely. After talking with some clients, I'm actually going to replant cucumbers. That's why my nails are janked up here. I'll show you guys my cucumbers. They're huge. See, crystals and plants. It's giant cucumbers. So I have like 18 plants of those that have to go outside. It's been super cold. And because it's a new moon in Gemini, it's a good day to do that. So wish me luck and I will see you guys soon. Best of wishes to everyone. And